Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I am your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very accomplished young entrepreneur from Mumbai, India, Mr. Harshal Ganjawalla. Harshal, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Harshal is the director of MGPRO, which is a commercial refrigeration and hospitality equipment solutions business. So, Harshal, let me start by asking you, tell me a little bit about your own journey and what got you interested in the area of refrigeration and food service, which led to this foundation of MG Pro.
So, growing up, hearing stories about hotels and restaurants, restaurant kitchens, and also being passionate about cooking and a foodie, myself, I had developed a strong interest in the dynamics of the hospitality in the catering industry since this company was originally founded by my parents, by my father, rather initially in 1982. The company was called Hospitality Appliances, though it still is called Hospitality Appliances. And MG Pro is the brand, under which we sell equipment and solutions to the industry. So back already, when I was really young, I had, kind of developed a keen interest, towards this industry, since I heard a lot of stories from my parents, about what goes around inside kitchens and inside bars. While I was in college, I had ventured into DJing. I was a DJ, and I had also gotten into entertainment and event management. So this went on for a period of about 7 to 8 years. When I was DJing and I was in the entertainment industry, where I had formed a venture, and I used to provide DJs for clubs and for bars across Mumbai on a contractual basis and organize events, in these places. So I happened to meet a lot of bar professionals, a lot of chefs, during this phase. And many of our conversations, often revolved around, the challenges and the difficulties they faced, during operations, especially during peak hours. So my journey, like I said, in commercial refrigeration and the food service industry started, back when I was a child. But officially, I joined, my father's company later on after I, kind of finished with my stint and realized that my true calling is, in the food service industry, and I joined my father about 2 decades ago. So I think sometime in 2006 or is 2005 or 2006 is when I joined my father. The idea was that I had realized that efficient and reliable equipments are very, very crucial to the success of any food and beverage service operation. So initially, when I started off with Dad, my initial exposure came from various roles, ranging from after sales service. That is where, I started off in the company. So I used to take care of the after sales service, where we used to get a lot of complaints, and we used to have to, deploy our technicians to sites, and we had installations across the country, not just in Mumbai. So the challenge was the challenge was not really only taking care of the local technicians, but also technicians that were, in locations in Delhi, in Bangalore, in Hyderabad, in Calcutta, in Goa. After sales service, I started getting into a little bit of the sales side of the business, the projects, the technical side, where I had a lot of interactions with technical consultants, chief engineers of hotels, where we had a lot of technical discussions. Though I do not really have a technical background educationally, but over a period of time, I developed a keen interest, and I learned on the job.
Mm.
And fortunately, it came to me quite well, since probably also since I have been listening to a lot of technical stories from my father,
Yeah.
for so many years.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it kind of came to me naturally, and I was very lucky there.
Fantastic. And I was just going to say, you had obviously got a very, very strong mentor in your father.
Exactly,
And nothing
absolutely,
could be better than that, isn't it, for an
absolutely,
entrepreneur?
absolutely.
But tell me, Harshal, what are some of the biggest challenges in manufacturing customized kitchen and refrigeration equipment?
Oh, challenges. There are a lot of. It's a very very challenging field. So see, manufacturing itself is a very challenging field. Now, when we talk about manufacturing customized equipment, the challenge is probably doubled there.
Yeah.
So, manufacturing customized equipment, especially when you're talking about refrigeration and you're talking about kitchen equipment, it has various complexities. Like you have things like design, where we have to actually design a particular kind of an equipment for a customer. Now, you see, in India, this is what I have learned over the period of these 20 years that I've been around, that um, customization is not just about design, it is about absolute optimum utilization of that little space that the client has,
Mm.
especially in locations like Bombay, where real estate is very very precious, is very
Oh.
very expensive.
Mm.
So, when you have a refrigerator, let's say if you have a refrigerator and you have a certain set of standard sizes, internationally people use a certain set of standard sizes.
Mm.
But when I had just joined, Dad, I would often have, clients who will say, "Ki hamare paas, I have 3 feet of space. I
Mm.
wanted to build a refrigerator in that 3 feet of space."
Mm.
And building a refrigerator back in the day, was very different as compared to how it is now.
Mm.
Building equipment back in the day was uh, just about fabrication. It was all about it was having a small gala or a karkhana, if I may call it,
Mm.
where you had a certain set of fabricators. We prepare a drawing either on an AutoCAD or something like that,
Mm.
and you manufacture a refrigerator.
Mm.
So there was no real, no real focus on the design, the aesthetics, the sustainability. Uh, it was mainly about functionality.
Mm.
Whereas now, there is a lot of difference when it comes to all of these things. So design plays a very very important role now.
Right.
Right from how you're right from what is going to be the capacity of that machine, to what
Mm.
it is going to be capable of doing, to how long it is going to last. You see, in kitchens, refrigerators are not used with care. So we
Correct.
generally say don't handle with care. When
Mm.
we supply our equipment
Yeah.
to kitchen, we say don't handle it with care, because
Mm.
it's designed to take that torture. So
Correct.
generally in peak hours, kitchens are, doors of refrigerators are not closed with the hand. They are generally,
With the
either.
shoulder or the foot.
Yes,
Mm.
exactly. So the when we are talking about design, we have to consider all of this.
Mm.
Apart from this, especially during peak hours, kitchens are hot. They tend to get really hot.
Mm.
So the ambient temperature in a kitchen is anywhere between 45 or 50 degrees, Celsius,
Mm.
which is really really hot. So again, the refrigerator needs to be in a position of working under those conditions, with multiple door
Correct.
openings, where the chef is taking things out or keeping things inside.
Mm.
So it has to be able to work under those conditions. So design comes with all of that
Yeah.
kept in mind.
Very interesting.
After that, of course, you have things like precision and quality control, where customized equipment For when you have a standard piece of equipment, it's easy to have an SOP for quality control.
Right.
But when you have a custom piece of equipment, it's not always very easy to have an SOP for quality control. So we also need a lot of skilled manpower when you talk not just about the manpower who works on the floor, but also the engineering, where they understand what is it that we have to check when we are talking about quality control. In terms of the aesthetics and in terms of the working, the performance, the energy consumptions, all of these things.
Very interesting.
Then you have supply chain management. You have supply chain management, you have cost management. Again, when you have customized equipment, every time you have to deliver a piece of equipment to any part of the country, it's a challenge because the packaging is different every single time. You don't have like a standard boxing with branding on it. It keeps changing from equipment to equipment. So there is also developing packaging for each equipment separately, which is also a very, very challenging field, because generally most of these people who, from where we get our packaging material or ready-made boxes, they want quantities, right? Nobody wants to manufacture one piece of anything. So these challenges, are what
Absolutely
we have
right.
to handle.
And you were speaking about, in the old days, you probably used AutoCAD and designed something.
Yes.
My question is, what role does technology play in the development of all your products now?
Oh, so technology is moving really, really fast. So you have a lot of developments that I have noticed in just these 20 years that I have been here. And you just to list a few, for in terms of refrigerators, you have certain set of new innovations that enhance the efficiency and improve the safety and ensure sustainability of equipment. So you have technologies like smart connected systems. You have energy efficiency monitors. You have a lot of automation that has come into the industry. We have advanced materials and advanced designs. We have advances in health and safety. You have customization and personalization. So now this is one more thing where we have a lot of clients where they want to personalize equipment. So when you have a bar and you have a fancy bar that has been made with a fancy cocktail station, a lot of clients want their names of their bars etched on their equipment. So when you are sitting across the bar, and when the barman is serving you, you are actually not just looking at plain simple bar equipment, but you're looking at equipment with the name of that particular bar etched on that equipment. So thereby, you have technologies like you have laser cutting machines, you have laser welding machines that have come into the picture now in the last 5 years. And that has really, really changed how productive the factories are, and how personalized we can make our equipment, and how, of course, aesthetically more appealing we can make these equipment.
Amazing.
So that is one side of it. The other side is the operational side, where I said you have things like smart connected systems. So you see, now in a kitchen you have various kinds of equipment. You have refrigerators, you have ovens, you have fryers, you have exhaust systems. Nowadays you have data loggers and IoT devices, where you can actually have all of this connected to your computer, and the chef or the chief engineer can be sitting in his cabin, or probably at a remote location also, monitoring all of this.
Wow.
You also have systems where they give you warnings about possible breakdowns.
Mm.
You see now, when you have a kitchen in Bombay, when you have a restaurant in Bombay, or any other metropolitan
Mm.
city for that matter, where real estate is expensive, you have a limited set of equipment in a kitchen, right?
Correct.
So let's say if you have a pizza restaurant, and if your pizza oven breaks down, so that means that your restaurant is going to be closed.
Correct.
So you have these technologies where the system would warn you that there could be a breakdown, for which then the client would ensure that there is preventive maintenance done. So these technologies are
Very
very, very
interesting.
rapidly evolving and coming into the industry now.
Fascinating. Fascinating. And given the size of this huge market, the hospitality market, what strategies are you implementing to grow MG Pro and to keep it as a leader?
So back in the day, when I joined my father, our strategy was very simple. We used to go and market ourselves to hotel brands, to restaurant brands. All from the likes of Oberoi Hotels, Taj Hotels, ITC Hotels, and the other restaurant brands that are in the market. Or were in the market back then. And we would directly sell to these brands. Um, Later on, when I started taking a little more active role in the operations of the company, I realized that India is a huge market, right? And if we want to really have a larger share of the pie of the entire market in India,
Mm.
going directly to the customer is not probably the way forward.
Mm.
We going directly to the customer is probably increasing competition.
Mm.
So what we started doing was we started collaborating with technical consultants, with interior designers and architects, and we also started selling not directly to the customer but through dealers and channel partners.
Mm.
So what we started doing was we started having dealers and channel partners in all major cities across the country.
Mm.
And now, since the growth is majority of the growth is now happening in tier 2 and tier 3 cities,
Mm.
we've also started having dealers in these cities, thereby not competing with them but collaborating with them, which I believe is the way forward.
Right.
It's an ecosystem that one builds. um, Otherwise, what happens is that a lot of dealers, they tend to import equipment from places like China,
Mm.
where of course the equipment is very friendly in terms of price,
Mm.
and you end up competing
Correct.
uh, instead of collaborating, which really does not make sense
Absolutely.
according to me.
Absolutely.
And apart from this, this is something that I have learned over my experience, that many entrepreneurs, including us, we were into this focus of perfecting our product and our service.
Mm.
However, in doing so, we often forget that the importance of building and nurturing client relationships is very important. So attracting a client is one thing,
Mm.
but sustaining those relationships is an other critical component, and it's a completely different ballgame altogether.
Mm.
So a satisfied client is likely to make repeat purchases and seek additional services.
Mm.
A solid client relation is going to provide a steady stream of revenue. Clients, when they're happy, are going to generate referrals, leave positive reviews. And in today's times, where social media is so influential, these positive reviews make a lot of difference. They may not get you sales, but they leave a positive impact on your brand.
Well said.
So that's what we've
Well
been.
said. Well said. So, Harshal, I have time for two more questions. Uh, it's often been said about manufacturing and, of course, now refrigeration and the hotel businesses, the impact on environment or sustainability.
Yes.
What steps does MG Pro take to approach sustainability in your processes? And what initiatives are you taking to reduce the environmental impact?
Okay, so there are a lot of components, or let me put it this way: there were a lot of components back in the day when I had just joined the industry, the company, which were which were CFC, which affected the the ODP, and so the ozone depleting potential. They had a huge ozone depleting potential, and they had a huge GWP, which is global warming potential.
Mm.
So in refrigerators, and also in other equipment, not just in refrigerators, you have things like insulation, right? You have things like refrigerant gases, which are used in these systems, and these are very, very harmful, for the environment. So there are a lot of new technologies that have now, new materials that have now involved, in the industry. Though they are not very easy to use, they are not very practical to use. Um, uh, they are also slightly more expensive, but looking at the larger picture, they are the future,
Mm.
right? So when you're and when you're manufacturing, we you know we don't have a choice but to ensure we consider at least a 10-year path.
Mm.
You don't manufacture just for the present, but you plan for at least
Correct.
10 years.
Correct.
So what we've done is we've evolved and started using materials that do not affect the ozone layer, as we've learned back in school as well. And refrigerant gases that we use are environmental friendly. They have a very, very low global warming potential. Especially now, there is this new gas. All these years we've been using gases called R134A gas and R404A gas, which is environmental friendly, but not as friendly as it should be.
Mm.
So now the new gases that have come in. So there's this new gas called R290. This gas is a natural gas. It's a completely natural gas. There is no chemical used in this gas, and it's zero on ODP and zero on GWP.
Mm.
Also, the best part is that this gas is, the cooling efficiency that we have in this gas is extremely, extremely fast.
Mm.
So, what we have been doing, we've been running a few tests in our factory where you have a refrigerator and you have an LED bulb, and we actually check, what is the power consumption of these machines, and you'll be surprised to know that the refrigerator draws lesser power than the LED bulb.
Wow.
So thereby, reducing the energy
Mm.
consumption,
Mm.
which is very, very critical when it comes to a kitchen, which has so many equipment, consuming, guzzling energy. So yeah, that's
That's
that's that's how
fantastic.
we've been working
That's
on.
amazing. And Harshal, my last question to you. In an economy that will is growing from 4 trillion to maybe 10 trillion in the next 7, 8, 10 years, hospitality will be the first area that will boom.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Where, what is your vision for MG Pro and where do you see your own company?
So from we are part of a lot of associations, where we often collaborate and we liaison with the government. And of course, with various sectors of various industries, related to tourism, related to equipment, related to consulting, design, architecture. And from there, we've been noticing that, the total projected contribution of Indian hotel industry in the GDP
Mm.
of India is growing, and it's growing very, very rapidly. For example, in 2022, it was $65 billion. And in 2027, it is projected to be $110 billion. And by 2047, this is going to be nothing less than $1,504 billion, which
And
is
$1.5 trillion.
yes, it is amazing, the growth.
Mm.
So the entire industry is the entire world is looking at India right now.
Correct.
So what I envision MGPRO as a company to do is to prioritize quality, prioritize innovation, prioritize customer satisfaction.
Mm.
So the goal is to create a brand that consultants and channel partners, can trust to deliver the best equipment and the best services for their clients.
Mm.
I often feel that everybody focuses, like I said, everybody focuses on selling equipment, and everybody forgets when it comes to maintenance and when it comes to servicing. People seem to lose interest for some reason,
Mhm.
and that's one of the downsides of the industry, especially in India. Okay, if you go abroad, there is a lot of focus given to after sales service, but when it comes to India, people they don't seem to have that that focus.
Mm.
So back when I joined, my father, he always kept repeating this to me, that the our company is all about reliable products and enviable service. So this is that is the focus that I envision MGPRO to achieve. I'll not say that we have even achieved 50% of that yet. We still have a very, very long way to go, and that's what I see myself achieving
Phenomenal.
towards.
And on that note, Harshal, and your amazing line, I love what your father told you, and I'm sure this must be your tagline: reliable products and enviable service. I think that should be the dream of anyone who's in manufacture, or for that matter, any business. Thank you
Absolutely.
so much for speaking to me about your own incredible journey from a DJ to sending DJs to now running such an amazing manufacturing enterprise. Thank you so much for educating me personally, and I'm sure all my viewers and listeners, on what goes into building a customized piece of equipment for a restaurant, for a kitchen, and for a bar. Thank you again for talking to me about how important sustainability and manufacturing is, and how you are replacing, you know, uh, gases which are very friendly. I don't remember all the terms that you told
Yeah.
me, but which are friendly for us as human beings. And thank
Thank
you
you.
also for sharing with me your perspectives. Thank you
Thank you
again,
so
and good
much.
luck to you.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.